Thank you so much for joining us today at Christpoint Church. We want you to know we're real people living real lives serving a real God. We hope that you enjoyed today's sermon by our lead pastor, Steve Qualls. Welcome home.
Jacob had this wrestling match with the Lord. Jacob had this wrestling match with the Lord, and it happened to have continued throughout the night. Now, here's the thing. No man can look upon the Lord and live. God said, look, if you don't let go of me, the sun's rising, you're going to die. And Jacob said, I would rather die than to let you go. I'm not letting you go until you bless me. I'm not letting you go until I get my blessing. Until I know that we are linked together forever. I'm not letting you go for anything or for any reason. See, here's the thing. We're not fighting. The war is going on for the limp, and we're not fighting hard enough to get locked in to get our limp to start with. We're not fighting. Jacob didn't get his limp until he held on. And he held on with everything that he had. He said, look, and I mean, he had the Lord himself in a headlock. And he had him bound up. And he said, look, and he had his legs around him, and he had him like, you're not getting out of here. And the Lord literally said, I'm about to get out of here, or you're going to die. And Jacob says, I'm not doing it till you bless me. And he had to touch his hip. He had to change. He blessed him. And you say, how can he get blessed by having his hip popped out of socket? But I want you to look at verse 26, and we're going to move on. I will not let you go. I will not let you go. At that point, God changed Jacob's life forever. Forever. Jacob carried a noticeable limp throughout the entirety of his life because of that one encounter. Now, how do you know that? Let's go to Hebrews chapter 11, verse 21. I'll show you. This is how you know this. Jacob leaned, or he bowed over his staff. See, when he was dying, he blessed his sons. He blessed the sons of Joseph, leaning or bowing over his staff. At his death words, he's still leaning on his staff because he's got a heavy limp. His gait was forever changed. Now, last night when I talked about this, I don't know if you know Arnold Bean, but Arnold Bean has a prosthetic leg. Arnold Bean does not walk the same as he did before he lost that leg. He lost that leg in an accident, a car accident. He don't walk the same. If you look at him, you watch him right now, he walks because he has to walk in a different fashion. Bean doesn't get up in the morning and say, you know what, I wonder if that thing grew back like a toenail. It don't grow back. It's not going to grow back. So he has to get up every morning and come to grips and come to the realization that I'm never going to walk the same. Here is where we need to be. I have to get up every morning and I have to say, I will never walk the way I used to. I will, and you know why? Because I didn't let go. I will never walk the way that I used to walk because I refused to let go even now. Even until I'm an old man, I will walk with a limp the rest of my life. I can't walk the same as I used to. People want to see how you walk. Your children are waiting and seeing what your walk looks like. Jacob carried his experience with God through the rest of his life. His limp was as noticeable on his last days as it was on his first. See, it was a warfare that was happening and is still happening for the limp. And see, it's such a subtle warfare that the devil is winning this warfare and winning this war because he's attacking the limp. He wants us not to be changed by the Lord. He wants us to walk the same as we ever did before. The devil wants to take away your limp. I'm telling you, I promise you, he wants to remove the way you approach people through. He approaches people through you. He wants to, you know what? People need to see in each one of us that there's something different going on. People need to see something different in us. He wants you to go back to the way you used to walk. And here's the bad thing. You can do that. You can do that. You know what? I get fired up, man. I get fired up. I went to RPM. Man, I prayed out by the river or the lake. I had a good time, man. I was just worshiping the Lord. It was great. Everything was awesome. You know, men were gathered together. There was 40. I don't know if you know that, but there was 40 men gathered around, worshiping the Lord, having a time in the Lord. Man. I come back into here, and man, our children are on fire. The presence of the Lord is so heavy upon us. We're just in a place of almost euphoria with the Lord. Am I going to keep walking in that? Because I have the choice not to. I can make my own choice. You know what? I think I'm going to go back to walking the way I used to. You know, I would like to just tell you what God says about that. You spent my whole night. You spent my whole night. We wrestled together. You almost died. And this is the thanks I get. You walk for a week and quit. You walk for a month and you give up. You know what? When Jacob walked out of there, he had to face Esau. He didn't know if he's going to try to. Esau had an army with him. He didn't know if Esau was going to kill him or not. The Lord says, I wrestle with you, give you part of me to take with you, and you give up at the first sight of an Esau in your life. He walked out. He could have said, you know, he could have been walking toward Esau. You know, I'm walking toward Esau. I'm going somewhere else because this ain't working. But no, he kept walking toward him. He kept walking toward what he had to confront, his greatest fears. See, your limp does more damage to the devil's plan than what you realize. Your limp does more damage to the devil's plans than we have ever a clue. Your limp is your identity marker. It's what identifies you as a follower of the Lord. It's what identifies you. Let me ask you something. Put yourself in a crowd, in a church. Do you identify with what's going on? Do you identify as a Christian? Let's just say 10 people. Line 10 people up at a church. Can they identify you? Now, get yourself out of there. Go into the first bar that you find on a Friday night. Let's say Saturday night. It gets a little rowdy on a Saturday night. And let's line 10 people up. Do we look different? Do we look different? Do we act different? Or do we act and look just like they do? That's just, I'm just asking you. Your limp is your identity marker. It's what makes you connected with God. And don't think that you can't just go back to walking any way you want. We have to get up every morning and realize I'm never going to be the same. People won't follow your perfection, but they'll chase after your limp. They don't care how perfect you are. They don't care how good you do or how much money you make or how much you pour into this or how much you do over here or how nice you are. The nicest person I ever met in my life. I love them. They're just so awesome. Are they going to follow? They're not going to follow that for long. People don't follow nice. They follow a limp. They chase after a limp. Now, let me show you what the limp looks like. In every arena. There's a guy named David in the Bible. I don't know if you know anything about David. He's a king. He was a nobody that became a somebody. And then he was a great somebody, and he became king. David said, you know, I mean, here's the thing. Let me just back up. I just want to rephrase this a little bit. We are defeated by great lies. We are defeated by two great lies. I'm going to get onto those in just a second. And I'm going to show you what it looks like for David in Psalms 23. We know this psalm. Even as a kid, you learned this psalm. If you don't know it, you kind of are familiar with it. But I want to show you verse 5. Psalm 23, verse 5. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Let me explain to you what David's going through. We'll come back to this in just a minute. You and I are under attack. You and I are under attack, and Satan wants to steal your limp, and he wants to steal my limp. I promise you that. I can promise you that. You know what? I identify with Matt Keller, who leads our relational network of pastors, when he said, I mean, he leads a network of pastors, about 100 pastors, and his church is rather large, and he's on a lead team of art, all this stuff, and this is what he said. As a pastor, when you get to the point to where the doorbell rings and the pizza guy's job looks good to you, you know, you may need a little silence and solitude. You may need to be encouraged. When you look at the guy up and down and you say, I could wear that uniform. Looks pretty. I could do this job. I don't have any pressures with this job. You know, sometimes we have to realize that our limp is under attack. And this is what the devil works and attacks the limp through fear and through a series of lies, but we're going to look at two of them. A series of lies and through fear. Lie number one is the lie that people tell you about yourself. This is the lie that people tell you about yourself. Now, I'm going to tell you, I know what it's like to believe a lie that somebody said to me about myself when a finger is stuck in my face in August of 1998 and said, you will never amount to anything. You will never. You are a joke. This is exactly what was stuck into my face and told me. And let me tell you something. To this day, I have to back down every day. And sometimes it has a little bit of a leg room. Sometimes it may even affect my limp a little bit. See, this is the lie that people tell you about you. This is the whether it's true or whether it has some grounds of truth, it is a lie. It is a lie. They're telling you something about yourself. The second lie of all great lies is the lie that you believe about yourself. See, this is the lie that we believe about ourselves. And then the fear is we're afraid to be vulnerable. We're afraid to be transparent. We're afraid of being hurt. So lie number one, you will never, maybe you can't, or maybe you won't. Satan will use those closest to you to steal your limp because they feel uncomfortable about what God is wanting to do through you. So he will steal away your limp. Now, when we go back to verse 5 of Psalm 23, this is what David was dealing with. David had people close to him that later on when he writes about it, he mentions these people in his life being his brothers and his father as being enemies. Did you ever wonder why when Samuel came to anoint a king, God said, go to the house of Jesse? Because under that roof of Jesse, I've chosen a man who's a man after my own heart to be the next king of Israel. And Samuel goes there and God says, not that guy. Man, this guy Eliab, he's a big dude. He looks good. What about brother number 2? No, not him. Goes through all of these 7 brothers. Hey, Jesse, what's up, dude? I don't get it. Where's your sons? Where's your sons? You know, it's like, hey, God, what's going on? And he said, well, I got one more son. Do you ever wonder why he wasn't there? You ever wonder why David wasn't there? It's because David wasn't invited there. He wasn't there because David was an outcast in his own family. He wasn't there because his brothers hated him and his father hated him. And that's a long story, and I read a book about it. So he was hated and despised by his own family. David writes later, God prepares the table before me in the presence of my enemies. And I want you to look at this verse again. I want you to look at what he says in part B. And he anoints my head with oil. He said, you got another son? Do you? Yeah, I got one. He's way out where nobody ever goes, where nobody ever talks to him, where nobody can see him. He's out there. He can't be the one. Go get him. And you, Jesse, and you, brothers, y'all ain't sitting down till he gets here, and I'm not either, because you're just about to get your world rocked. You're getting ready to be kingshipped by the one you hate the most. So they brought David back in, and God says, that's my man. The very one that believed the lie. David walks in, David goes, I didn't think I was invited. No, because you wouldn't, David. So here's lie number 1. David, you're not invited. We don't believe that you could ever be a king, that God would ever choose you. Here's lie number 2. David didn't come because he believed what they said. He believed what they said. Let me tell you what happened to David. The devil tried to defeat him and steal his limp before he ever before he ever pulled himself under the anointing. God prepared a table before him in the presence of his own enemies. You ever wonder why they're not ever hardly mentioned again? Because at that point, from the battle of Goliath, from that point on, he went to the house of Saul and was raised by Saul and was raised by Jonathan. He didn't go to his home anymore. David was anointed king in front of his father and his brothers. Studies show that David was hated. He was despised by his family. So much so that he was off over away. Family and words have a way of slicing deep. Lie number 2. We looked at lie number 1. Lie number 2. Maybe I am what they say I am. Maybe I am. Maybe I won't ever. Maybe I will always be an addict. because everybody around me seems to be able to tell me what's best for me. And everybody around me can tell me how terrible and wretched I am because I can't shake an addiction. Maybe I will always be an addict. Maybe I will never get rid of these things, these vapes. Well, what's wrong with the vape? Well, we don't have enough long-term study enough to know what's wrong with it. What was wrong with the cigarette in the early days? Oh, it only killed people, including my father. But, you know, in the beginning, well, it's fine. It's cool. Everybody had one, you know. Maybe I am. Lie number 2, maybe I am what they say I am. Lie number 2, maybe I really can't. Lie number 2, maybe I really can't walk with Christ. You know, people say, who you think you are? Who do you think you are? You're trying to walk with the Lord. Do you realize who you used to be? You know what? Yeah. Yeah, I know who I used to be. I know who I used to be. You know who I used to be. But my God knows, He don't know who I used to be. Because all He knows is who I am now. See, you know, the devil deals in who you used to be. But God forgets it, casts it away as far as the east is from the west. So who I am now is all that matters. And they look at you and they say, he don't walk the same as he used to. He looks weird. Limps look weird when lies are being told. Lie number 1 is the lie that is on you. It's the one that people tell. Lie number 1 is the lie that is on you. Lie number 2 is the one that you allow inside you. This is the one that we allow in. There's somebody that was there with us yesterday and is here this morning that said, I had that finger stuck in my face at 8 years old by my mother. And my mother told me I will never amount to anything. What does that do for an 8-year-old child when they're not even loved by their mother? It destroys them. Lie number 2 says, I don't belong here. See, this is the one where we start telling it. I don't belong here. I'm not good enough. I don't look like they do. So then all of a sudden, through lie number 1 and through lie number 2, the devil's trying, warfare going on for the limp, and he tries to steal the limp, and all of a sudden, he's got an avenue for fear. And I'm going to tell you, this is how fear works. Fear says you may care more about how you look than how you walk. I may care more about how I look than how I walk. See, I'm going to ask you, does this shoe fit this morning? Because if it does, I want you to get up and run with a limp to the altar. I want you to get up and run to the altar because we have to cultivate that noticeable limp. We have to be different. You're afraid. See, this is what. You're afraid it's going to cost you something. We're always afraid of the cost. Or we would do everything in the world. We would bet everything on everything if it wasn't for the cost. We would climb it. We would jump it. If we were afraid of the cost. We're afraid of the cost. We're afraid it's going to cost us our reputation. We're afraid it's going to cost us our friends. We're afraid it's going to cost us our pride, and that's the one we don't even realize we're afraid of. Why don't you become powerful in the Lord and lead your family in prayer? Because I'm too prideful. I'm too prideful to show them that I need a God. I need a Jesus in my life to tell me what to do. See, we're afraid because we're selfish. We're afraid because we're lazy. Laziness is a fear. Well, I just don't know if I can do this or not. But no, I'm just not willing to try. Get the bat in your hand, son. Get up here and swing it. Well, I'm afraid I'm going to hit with a ball. You know what? I'm going to get right in your face and I'm going to tell you, you probably will. You're probably going to get hit with the ball. But you're never going to know what it's like to hit the ball unless you get hit by the ball once or twice. And then when you hit it, you know what it's like. Yes, we're probably going to get hit. Some people won't make it through the limp. I'm sorry to say, I wish it was 100%, but it's not. Some people won't make it through the limp. They won't stay the journey. In the book of Job, Job was attacked by Satan. He lost his belongings. He lost his livestock. He lost all of his children. But Satan couldn't steal his limp. No matter what, he lost everything. Satan attacked him, and he lost everything. God restored everything double. I want you to notice, where Job's concerned, God restored everything double except for his children. Not the children. He restored everything else double. He gave him back the same number of children that was taken. He gave him back double everything else. Why did he not give him back double the children? Why just the same amount? And here's why, I believe. Because with the children, he had the opportunity to transfer the limp into. See, if we don't transfer a limp into the livestock or our belongings, we have an opportunity to transfer our limp into the people around us. Not just one, not just two, but maybe 100, maybe 20, maybe for generations. Because the limp is contagious. It is reproducible. He had the opportunity to transfer the limp into his children, into the lives of everybody around him, everybody they met, and all of their descendants. In other words, I don't need to give you double now because I'm going to magnify and multiply the limp so much in you that you can't contain. It's not going to do any difference. 20 over 10 is not going to make a big difference. I'm just going to give you the same amount, and your job is to transfer the limp. Transfer the limp. It's our job to infect others. Lie produces fear, and fear produces bondage. If we will grab a hold of God, remember that scripture, grab a hold. I'm not going to let you go. You realize the sun's coming up. You know, you can't live past this. You do know that, don't you? That's not on my agenda this morning. What's on my agenda is I'm not letting you go until you bless me. If we don't let him go, he'll change the way we walk forever. And tomorrow, we have to get up and we have to refuse to let go again. If we're going to keep the limp, we've got to realize this is what we have to do. If you ain't limping, I'm telling you right now, listen to me really clear. Listen to me real good. If you're not limping, you're in bondage. In some form of bondage if you're not limping. David went from a hated brother and a hated son, from a shepherd in the backfields where nobody wanted to be. He went from being a nobody to being the right hand of the king, and eventually the king. He became a powerful warrior for Israel. He led victories. He killed tens of thousands. They even sang about it when he entered the streets of Jerusalem. David has, or the streets of the city, he has killed his tens of thousands. It takes a powerful warrior with a sword to enter a city in that kind of victory. But it takes a powerful warrior to face a man with a sword. It takes a powerful warrior to face a man with a sword trying to kill you. But it takes a priest with a limp to enter the city naked. I love the way we say it in the South. It's not naked, it's naked. It takes a priest to enter the city, take off all their clothes, and limp and worship. And say, look, I'm not ever going to be the same. David wasn't great because he was a military genius. He was great because he was a worshiper. People won't follow your perfection, but they will chase after your limp. They will chase after your limp. I'll tell you this before we close. I call it the dark times or the dark ages for me and Tina. We had served for years. We became the associate pastors of our church. And then all of a sudden, we had nowhere to go, and we had no church again. And during that two-year period, there was nowhere for us to be. We tried to go somewhere. No matter how good it wasn't home. So I remember we were at a church, and we were at a service, and a youth group came back from something. And here was the youth. I used to be the youth pastor, Tina and I did. And here we are in a dark time with no nothing. They all got on stage. And they all lined up. Just an army of young people. Right over here is where I was in that church. And I just started crying. I said, God, where's my army? Where's my army? I know what they look like, but I don't see them. I can envision them, but you haven't given them to me. And sometimes we have to not despise the journey. because God's getting us somewhere. It just don't look like it is right now. And I sit right over there, and I'm like, Lord, where's my army? Last night, I looked around. There was 40 men worshiping, praying for each other, holding hands, laying hands on each other, anointing oil, putting anointing oil on each other. And God says, here's your army. Here's your army right here. Guys and by the way, we didn't just have a time of going to the next level. Somebody got saved this weekend. I'm telling you, gave their heart to the Lord. God says, here's your army. Now, we've got battle to do. Guys, we've got battle to do. We've got guys and girls, men, women, mothers, fathers, grandparents. Let me tell you something. If we walk out of here and we're not limping, we got problems. If we walk out of here and we're not limping, there's not going to be a better time to discover a heavy limp. God is saying now is the time. We don't have the luxury in this country anymore of just sitting back and coasting. We talked about something over this weekend. On Friday night, we looked at RPM. RPM, you look at a tachometer. It means you redline that thing. We said, look, we're going to build a race man. Friday night, we're going to strip it down. Saturday morning, we're going to start building it back. And Saturday night, we're going to find that we're going to build us a race machine, an army. And here's what we realized. You're not going to win races if you coast. You're not going to win races in neutral. You're not going to win races in reverse. You're going to win races by putting that thing in gear and stomping that thing to the right and redlining that thing, and you've got to take it to its limit or you're not going to win the race. So-and-so won. Why didn't you win? I tell you why he didn't win. Because he didn't put the right foot as far down as it would go. Get off the brake and put it on the accelerator and let's go. We're men. We're built to go hard and fast. That's what God has built us to be. We're not just protectors. We're priests in our homes. Hello again, and thank you for tuning in. I pray that today's sermon has spoken to your heart and has ministered to you well. We just want you to know that we have two locations, one at our Sparta campus, our main campus at Sparta on the square in Sparta, and our second campus is at Smithfield behind Ace Hardware. And we would love for you to call Christpoint Church your church home. And if you're viewing this and you can't get in to church and you feel like you want to be a part of the church, then you can always be a part of the church. Just drop us a note and let us know that you enjoy being on board with us. And if you'd like to give and be a part of the ministry, then you can do that by just sending a check to one of the locations at 614 Murphy Street, Smithfield, 13 Liberty Square in Sparta, and we'll get you on the road. We just love you so much, and you can download the Christpoint Church of Tennessee app and you can give online. So we are real people. We're living real lives, and we're serving a real God. And we just want to tell everyone, welcome home. We're so glad that you tuned in with us. Welcome home.